Part 25. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 242. Haven't you noticed that the sounds we hear now are actually less than when we first came in? Could it be because it is becoming more and more remote? Hubei guessed. Sumu shook his head when he heard this and objected, probably not. Generally speaking, the lusher the forest, the more active the creatures living in the forest will be. Especially the birds living in the forest will also. It's the most active one. I think maybe Shirley Yang is right, but everyone should be careful. Everyone nodded in agreement, and became a little more vigilant in their hearts, and began to take the changes in the surrounding environment seriously. After a while, everyone also found that it seemed to be what Shirley Yang said, and they moved further and further into the jungle. The surrounding environment became quieter and quieter. It was really weird. I think something is wrong, Hubei murmured to himself. Fatty Wong beside him nodded hurriedly. He also felt that there seemed to be an inexplicable dangerous atmosphere around him. Mina Yuping raised his head and looked at the sky, frowning in confusion. Said, "It's strange, there are cumulus clouds in this area." Everyone raised their heads after hearing the words, and sure enough they saw that the celestial phenomenon seemed to have changed unconsciously. The area was covered with clouds for some time. Mina Yuping seemed to feel something and turned around. He glanced towards the way he came and warned, "There is something weird here." When everyone heard this and looked in the direction he was looking at, they saw that the sky in the direction they came from was actually two extremes from the sky in the area where they were now. There was a clear sky over there and it was early morning here. Already covered with cumulus clouds. Not good. Either there's a ferocious beast ahead, or, Hubei frowned and looked at the dense forest in front of him with a solemn expression. Fatty Wong didn't continue after hearing half of what he said, and asked impatiently, "Or what? You should finish your sentence." Hubei glared at him and continued, "Or there is an unknown and terrifying big rice dumpling." As soon as Hubei said these words, everyone felt their hearts beating violently. The ferocious beast was easy to deal with, but if it was really a terrifying big rice dumpling, then I'm afraid it would give me a headache. Since there is danger ahead, let's go around it, right? Shirley Yang opened her mouth and put forward her own suggestion. After all, the dangerous area in front is not the only one that can be walked. Going around it is just an extra mile at most. Shirley Yang's suggestion is actually feasible. But everyone looked around. After 4 weeks, they found that the area covered by cumulus clouds was a bit too wide. If they wanted to go around it, it would take a very long time, and they didn't know when they would be able to go around it. In this way, everyone was stunned. After summing up, we decided to give up the idea of taking a detour and began to cautiously continue along the original route. On the way, we could occasionally hear a few birdsong from the treetops, which also made everyone feel a little calmer. At least this proves that this section of the road is still safe enough. Everyone moved forward cautiously, because they were always alert, and they could quickly react to some dangers around them. After walking for a long time, it was already approaching evening. After driving for a day, we still couldn't get out of this dense forest. We only ate some dry food and water on the way, and now we were feeling a little hungry. "Look, are those over there wild wolves?" Suddenly Fatty Wong tugged on Hubei beside him, pointed in one direction and whispered. After hearing the words, everyone immediately looked over, and sure enough they saw several grey wolves lying next to a big rock a little far away. "It seems to be resting there. Hee hee, now there is game to eat." Fat Wong rubbed his hands and smiled. His expression looked as vulgar as if he was preparing to do something terrible. Sumu and the others were also tempted. Everyone's stomachs were still a little empty at the moment, and they had been exhausted all day. After eating a few mouthfuls of dry food with an indescribable taste, when they saw the wild boar, they felt as if they had seen some delicacy. Everyone approached cautiously, and the wild wolves also noticed them as they approached. One or two immediately stood up and threatened them with bared teeth and gaping mouths. However, the remaining few seemed to be indifferent to them. They just glanced at them for a few times and then continued to lie on the ground and fell asleep. Strangeness. Hubei felt something strange in his heart, but he didn't think much about it, because the two wild wolves that bared their teeth and slit their mouths had already rushed towards them. Only two wild wolves were no match for Sumu and the others. However, after a few bites, Sumu and Mina Yuping were dealt with directly. The remaining wild wolves looked dumb and stupid. When they saw their companions being killed, they did not howl, but slowed down. He stood up and prepared to run away, but Hubei and Fatty Wang solved them together. Ha ha ha, now there is meat to eat. Fatty Wang smiled with satisfaction, looking at the wolf corpse lying on the ground, as if he was looking at a delicious feast. Come on, let's kill these wolves quickly and make a fire to roast them later. After eating dry food all day today, the taste in our mouths has faded. As Fatty Wang said, he took Men Yuping and Hubei to clean up the wolf corpse. However, as soon as he dragged the wolf corpse up, Sumu saw something unusual. Wait a moment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 243. Wait a moment. Sumu immediately stopped Fatty Wang and the others. Fatty Wang and Hubei, who were carrying the wolf carcass, stopped immediately, looked at Sumu with puzzled faces, and asked, "What's wrong?" Sumu walked towards the three of them. Shirley Yang, who was following him, looked at Sumu and then at the wolf corpses in Fatty Wang's and the others' hands. She also discovered something attentive and couldn't help but exclaimed, "Ah! That blood!" After saying that, he quickly stepped forward and pulled the wolf corpse from the hands of several people. "What's wrong? What is this for?" Hubei didn't understand the intentions of Sumu and Shirley Yang, but when he looked at where Shirley Yang was pointing, he opened his mouth in surprise. "Why is this blood golden?" Hearing Hubei's exclamation, Mina Yuping and Fatty Wang also looked towards the wound of the wolf corpse. Sure enough, they saw that the blood gurgling from the wound was actually golden, which was extremely weird. How so? Fat Wang couldn't believe it, even Mina Yuping frowned. Could this be a curse? Shirley Yang had a heavy look on her face, thinking of her grandfather's death. Her grandfather died because of a curse in his body. When he died, the blood flowing out of his body was also golden. Could it be that the animals here are the same as his grandfather? Cursed. Sumu also thought of the same question and felt that something was very wrong. Quack, quack. At this moment, several bird calls came from the treetops above. The loud sounds continued to echo in the dense forest, and then slowly faded away. The birds chirp weirdly. Mina Yuping suddenly said. Everyone was puzzled and heard Mina Yuping continue to explain, "I have been paying attention to the calls of those birds from the beginning. However, until just now, I noticed the calls of those birds. It seems that they have been following then call according to a certain pattern." Everyone was shocked and understood the meaning of Mina Yuping. These general bird calls have always been random calls. There is no rule at all. There is obviously something weird in such regular calls. At this time, everyone, a bad feeling arose in my heart. Quack, quack. Several more bird calls were heard in the sky. Sumu raised his head and took a look, then picked up a few small stones from the ground, reached out and threw them in the direction of the bird calls. In the blink of an eye, suddenly, several black-skinned birds fell from the treetops. No one was in the mood to marvel at Sumu's accuracy, because everyone crowded around the spot where the birds fell. Sumu stepped forward and picked up the birds. He killed them with his saber and examined them. He then discovered that the blood of these birds was also golden. This is also golden. Everyone felt a numbness in their scalps. They looked at the wolf corpse not far away and at the bird corpse in Sumyu's hand. They felt that the fog in their hearts was finally lifted. They had been in the process unknowingly since just now. They have stepped into a big situation, and the person who planned it is afraid that they will not step into the situation, so they will use the sounds of those birds to deliberately disarm them, and then lead them in. The night has begun to quietly fill the forest, and darkness is. I am walking slowly towards the earth with brisk footsteps. Dong dong, dong, dong dong dong. When the darkness enveloped everything, a gentle knocking sound came from the dark night. The sound was a little erratic. It seemed to be coming from a distant place, and it seemed to be ringing in everyone's ears. It was completely out of rhythm. Seems very strange. Chapter 194. Everyone was startled by the knocking sound and looked around nervously. However, the dark night covered up too many things, making it impossible for everyone to see the truth clearly. Sumyu carefully identified the direction from which the knocking sound came. When he really determined the location, he immediately looked in that direction. The night could not stop Sumyu's eyes. He looked towards the direction of the sound with all his eyes, and finally saw that all the knocking sounds came from the inside of a big tree. Looking back, Sumyu heard a plot from the original novel in his mind. In the original book, there was a coffin in a tree belonging to King Xian's wizard in this dense forest. Now when Sumyu looked at the big tree with constant knocking sounds, he knew in his heart that this should be the tree of that wizard. In the coffin. Although he already knew the origin of the other party, even Sumyu did not dare to make any rash actions at this moment. After all, no one knew whether there would be any unexpected things or changes. To be on the safe side, it was best not to do anything for the time being. Good to provoke. The sound came from the front, but I think we should not rush there for the time being. If there is anything, we can wait until dawn to slowly explore and see what it is. Although Sumyu already knew the origin of the voice, he couldn't tell the truth. He could only give suggestions to everyone and try to avoid everyone confronting that thing at this moment. Fortunately, the others were not reckless. And they still believed in what Sumyu said. So after hearing what he said, everyone had no intention of moving forward. However, out of curiosity about the sound, everyone still climbed up the surrounding trees and looked into the distance. He looked in the direction where the sound came from. As the saying goes, if you stand high, you can see far. When everyone climbed up the tree, they saw a very strange tree in the distance. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 244. The tree was so huge that at a rough look it would take at least several people hugging it to encircle the trunk. That tree doesn't have branches that grow randomly like other trees. From a distance, they saw that the branches of the giant tree looked like a person's arms, with the tree crown spread wide as if to support the sky of cumulus clouds above their heads. Everyone looked at it and exclaimed how strange the giant tree was, and began to wonder if there was any connection between the giant tree and the knocking sound. After getting off the tree, everyone began to analyze the knocking sound and the giant tree. After thinking deeply for a while, Hubie said, "I think the source of the sound should come from that weird big tree." The others didn't object. Obviously everyone had similar guesses. But Fatty Wang was very curious and said, "What is the origin of that big tree? How could it be so big?" No one can answer this question, and no one knows why the tree is so weird. "Peacock, what's wrong with you?" At this moment, Mi Yuping, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. Everyone looked back and saw Mi Yuping suddenly supporting Peacock. At this time, Peacock's face was a little ugly, and his small face looked a little pale and weak. Even the brows are all furrowed. "Peacock, are you okay? Is it uncomfortable?" Seeing this, Sumyu stepped forward to check the situation and found that Peacock was in a state as if he had suddenly lost all strength. He was leaning limply on Mi Nayuping. Seeing Sumyu coming over, Peacock showed a bitter smile. Said, "I just wanted to see what was weird about that tree, but I only saw the huge shadow lingering on the big tree. Originally I wanted to look at it for a while, but who knew that after looking at it for a long time, I'm getting more and more dizzy. I'm sorry, Brother Su, I can't help." Peacock said this with a very guilty expression on her face. She did not expect such a result, and she felt that her eyes would no longer be able to use that ability in a short time. Sumyu didn't expect this to be the case. He sighed inwardly, reached out and rubbed Peacock's head, and said, "Actually, you don't have to be like this. I just want to help you." Peacock interrupted Sumyu's words, staring at Sumyu closely with a pair of moist eyes, full of the light of admiration. Sumyu paused, then turned back to the crowd and said, "That tree has already. We are sure something is suspicious. We will rest here tonight for the time being and wait until daybreak to find a way to check it out." Everyone had no objection, so after letting the peacock rest under a big tree first, others began to pack up the extra branches around them, preparing to set up camp and rest for the night first. While everyone was busy, that burst of tight and slow sounds came again. This time it seemed particularly ethereal. Everyone listened carefully and carefully identified the direction of the sound, but found that the moonlight above their heads seemed to be getting redder and redder. "It's getting foggy." As soon as Hubie noticed that there was a faint mist in front of them, and it slowly became thicker and thicker, then it was like a wave sweeping towards everyone. Mi Nayuping looked at the rolling fog. The demonic mist. His eyes narrowed, and he reminded everyone loudly, "This mist is poisonous." When everyone heard this, they quickly took out the gas masks they had put away before and put them on. Dong dong, dong dong dong, dong dong. At this moment, the strange knocking sound sounded again. The sound was not loud, but it seemed extremely strange in the dark night filled with evil mist. Thick fog has enveloped everyone. For a moment, everyone's sight was blocked, and it was difficult to see everything around them clearly. Even when they took out a wolf-eye flashlight, the light turned into a straight beam, which could be seen. "How thick is this thick fog when you come out?" "Is everyone okay?" Sumyu shouted to confirm everyone's situation. At this moment, everyone gathered together to prevent unknown dangers from suddenly attacking them. Dong dong, dong dong dong. When everyone's nerves were tense, that strange knocking sound sounded again. The sound always sounded like this for a while, then stopped, and then sounded again after a while, as if it had been following a certain pattern. "Damn it, this sound is really endless." Fatty Wang grumbled angrily. Hubei also felt that the sound was just teasing their nerves, and said irritably, "What is this thing knocking on?" Hearing this, Sumyu thought for a moment and said, "The sound came from that giant tree. There should be a dead person inside that tree." "Dead people? Can dead people knock on tree trunks? Could this be the legendary ghost signal?" When the peacock heard this, his face turned pale with fear. He tightly grasped the sleeves of the people around him and tried his best to shrink back into the crowd. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 245. Ghost signal? What is a ghost signal? Fat Wang looked puzzled, but Peacock was too frightened to speak up. Hubie remembered the rumors that he had been in the army, so he said, "I once heard, I was still in the army at that time. There was always a legend in the army that some troops garrisoned in remote mountainous areas often received inexplicable signals on the radio. These signals were intermittent, and there were people asking for help, and warning, the content is all kinds of weird. When the troops receive such a radio wave, they will think that there are victims asking for help, and most of them will send people to search for the source of the radio wave signal. However, those who go there will never come back, as if they have disappeared from the world, and those ghosts the signal disappeared immediately, So this was the legendary seduction signal. Fatty Wang felt a cold air come out from the solace of his feet. Hearing the sound that was still ringing, he was so frightened that he almost turned pale. Then, is there a wild ghost seducing people? Sumu scolded and said, "Don't make blind guesses." But, ah! Just when Fatty Wang was about to retort, the peacock on the side suddenly screamed. The voice was full of panic, as if he had encountered something extremely scared. "Peacock, what's wrong with you?" Everyone hurriedly looked at where the peacock was, and saw that the peacock fell to the ground. His eyes were slightly dull, and he was looking at a certain position under his feet with a look of fear. Sumu stepped forward to help the peacock up, and then asked, "What did you just see?" Peacock pointed to a place under his feet and said shakily, "Something tripped me just now." Sumu took the flashlight and shined it towards the place pointed by the peacock, and saw that there seemed to be something under the grass blades. "What's this?" Fat Wang came up and tentatively opened the blades of grass, and then the true appearance of what was inside was revealed. It was a tightly wrapped box, and Min Yuping used a black gold ancient knife to pry open the outer box. After unpacking the box, everyone was a little surprised by what was inside. "What's this? Is it a radio?" Peacock saw that the thing that tripped him was not dangerous, and he no longer felt afraid. Instead, he asked curiously. Hubei stepped forward and took out the radio, looked at it over and over, and then confirmed, "This is an American-style military radio. It looks like it's been well preserved." As soon as Hubei got started, he fiddled with the military radio a few times. He didn't know where to adjust it, but gradually a rustling sound appeared from the radio. Sumu thought that the so-called ghost signal was actually a kind of electromagnetic wave, and the radio might also be able to receive this wave, so he immediately expressed his thoughts and asked Hubei to continue debugging. Hubei immediately started debugging as soon as he heard the words. Soon the noise gradually faded away, and then a very strange sound appeared. "Damn it, what are you talking about? Is this a ghost signal?" Fatty Wang was very shocked when he heard the chirping sound from the radio. Hubei, Sumu and Shirley Yang looked at Fatty Wang with speechless expressions and said, "This is not a ghost language, it's just a foreign language." "Ah! Foreign language?" Fatty Wang blushed when he heard this, touched his nose angrily, and said to himself, "The foreign devil language spoken by the ghost guy can be regarded as ghost language, haha." Fat Wang touched his nose with a look of embarrassment on his face, but as long as he didn't blush, the embarrassment would not catch up with him. "Shhh, don't talk yet. Listen to what's being said." Shirley Yang silenced everyone, and then began to listen carefully to the voice on the radio. The voice on the radio sounded sometimes clear and sometimes blurry. After listening carefully for a long time, everyone finally understood the language content and left this voice message. He was a pilot who was sent to deliver supplies, but accidentally crashed here. He left this message, gave the coordinates, and hoped to be rescued. On the Sino-Myanmar border and later on the Hump route, no fewer than 600 to 700 US military planes crashed in southwest China. Unexpectedly, one crashed here. Hubei felt a little emotional. He had been a soldier and fought in the war, and he felt extremely sad about the fate of the soldiers who fell here alone. Now everyone knew the ins and outs of this thing. After knowing that it was not some ghost signal, the high-spirited hearts in their hearts slowly relaxed a little. It's just that everyone is a little confused. The soldier left the coordinate point, but many years have passed since that battle, and the pilot must have died long ago. So should they go or not? This is a problem. How about we go over there and take a look? Even if that person is dead, we can help collect the bones and so on. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 246. How about we go over there and take a look? Even if that person is dead, we can help collect the bones and so on. Shirley Yang said hesitantly. Could it be some conspiracy? Peacock rarely interrupted and expressed his guess. Probably not, Fatty Wang thinks this should be impossible. Hubei also felt that it shouldn't be a trap or something, and said it's okay for us to go and take a look. Maybe that person survived with his strong willpower. Hubei felt that the man was a friendly army after all, and everyone after a while of discussion, they came to help, but ended up in trouble. They didn't know what to say. Now that they know the news, they can't ignore it for the sake of the country. Sumu, Professor Yang, brother, what do you think? Hubei thought for a long time, and then asked Sumu and the others for their opinions. Shirley Yang and Min Yuping didn't think it mattered, but Sumu felt something was strange. He tried hard to recall the original works in his mind. The plot, however, does not seem to have much description in the original work. It does not seem to be anything strange. However, the weird and uneasy feeling still vaguely surrounds Sumu's heart. If you decide to go there and have a look, it is best to wait until the fog clears after dawn. Sumu had no objection to taking a look, but the uneasy feeling in his heart still made him cautious. If he wants to go, he must be well prepared before going. You're right. There's nothing we can do now. We still have to be fully prepared. If that person is already dead, we can't throw away the lives of several people just to get one body. Hubei agreed very much with Sumu's proposal. Others had no objections, so everyone discussed it again and began to divide the work. Everyone sorted out the things they needed, while Hubei continued to squat. He got down to repair the old radio, hoping to repair it better and see if he could get some contact with the other party through modification. Fatty Wang was curious and stepped forward to help. He also had some skills in these, but this shabby radio seemed to have lost its basic function. Fatty Wang had been tinkering with it for a long time and it was still the same. Fatty Wang was so angry that he picked up the radio and smashed it to the ground. Who knew that the shabby radio would be smashed so directly? To a pulp. That. Fatty Wang watched everyone turn back to him, looked down at the radio that he had smashed to pieces, tugged at the corner of his mouth, laughed twice, and said two words: slippery hands. Everyone was speechless for a while, but the things were already broken, so there was no point in talking anymore. Early the next morning, everyone began to pack up and move forward. Their route today was in the same direction as the giant tree, so they could not avoid approaching the giant tree. The closer they walked, the more everyone was shocked by the majesty of the giant tree. Not only that, as they walked towards the giant tree, more and more beasts with strange behaviors appeared around them. Like the wild wolves before, they seemed to be dumb beasts, but they seemed to have no idea what death was when they attacked them. Even if they are injured, they never stop. Only by losing their lives can they truly calm down. After getting rid of several waves of wild beasts that came to attack them without mercy, everyone discovered that those beasts were actually in a state of being cursed with golden blood all over their bodies, which made everyone become more vigilant. And they also discovered that the closer they got to the giant tree, the more beasts with golden blood on their bodies became more numerous, and in the end they were almost endless. As they walked in the forest, they could still hear the strange signal sound from before, and the sound seemed to become more frequent during the day. After walking for a long time, everyone finally reached the range where they could see the entire giant tree. Seeing the giant tree up close, everyone couldn't help but feel an indescribable feeling in their hearts. The trunk of that huge tree alone requires more than a dozen people to hug it. The branches and leaves on the trunk are dense and cover the sky and the sun. Compared with the other trees standing there, it looks like an adult standing among the children. When everyone looked up at the tree, they seemed to be looking up at the giant pillar bearing the sky for a moment. It was so spectacular. This is too high. It feels like the branches are thicker than my whole body. Look, what is that? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 247. Look, what is that? Just when everyone was sighing at the size of the giant tree, suddenly Hubie pointed to the top of a big tree around the giant tree and exclaimed. Everyone looked around and saw that there was actually a hanging tree hanging on the top of the tree. The wreckage of a plane. The plane had already been broken into half. The wings of the plane were also broken and hung among the branches. Judging from the degree of wear and tear, it was obvious that it was no longer a year or two. This should be the wreckage of the plane where the pilot crashed, Sumu took a look and concluded. The previous information referred to this place, but seeing the appearance of the wreckage of the plane, everyone no longer had any hope that the pilot might survive. Fatty Wong took a step forward in a funny way and shouted in a bad foreign language, "Hello." He just shouted a few more words as if joking, saying that he was going to see if there were any surviving American soldiers, but unexpectedly after he shouted a few times, he actually got a response. "Hello." The sound was not very clear, but it was able to be heard clearly by everyone. Everyone had a look of shock on their faces. They couldn't believe it had been so long. Is there really anyone alive? No way. Is there really anyone alive? Fatty Wong was very surprised, and then asked in Chinese like a mutton skewer, "Who are you? How will you be here?" Everyone looked at the dilapidated plane carefully, fearing that another monster would rush out of it. But after a long time, no sound came again, and everyone began to wonder if they had just hallucinated. That weird voice came again. It said in a thin and weird voice, "Who are you?" Everyone was shocked when they heard this voice. It sounded very weird. Do you think this sounds a bit like a fat man's voice?" Hubei said hesitantly. Everyone was stunned and looked at the fat man warily. "Hey, what are you doing?" Sumu can't be a ghost. When Fatty Wong saw everyone looking at him warily, he suddenly became a little anxious. Just when he was about to step forward, he saw everyone taking a step back. Fatty Wong was completely anxious now. He didn't know why. At this time, the fat man looked gloomy and sweaty, as if he had just been fished out of the water. At this moment, the oil bottle moved, and he quickly pulled out the black gold ancient sword and threw it out with a shoo sound. The fat man was so frightened that he rolled over on the spot, holding his head. However, he saw a blood-red snake nailed to the tree trunk not far away. Sumu looked at. I was also very shocked. Isn't this the coxcomb snake in Jingju ancient city that can speak human words? Why is it here? Damn, Sumu was scared to death. What the hell is this? Everyone, be careful. There is something strange here. This red coxcomb snake is highly venomous. One bite will kill you in 3 seconds, Sumu explained. These are ghost snakes. They have become spirits and can speak human words. Legend has it that if you kill one, you will be retaliated, so everyone should leave quickly, the peacock said tremblingly as he looked at the snake nailed to the tree. Sumu thought about the original work. It is true that these snakes all move in groups and are highly organized, but Sumu took a closer look. There is no movement around, so I guess this thing came out to look for food alone. This place is too weird, everyone should keep moving forward. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 248. This place is too weird, everyone should keep moving forward. Shirley Yang looked around, then looked at Sumu nervously and said. It doesn't matter, you guys stay down here while Sumu goes up to take a look. Sumu knew that everything here was weird from the beginning, and he was probably frightened. After saying that, Sumu ran up the trunk like a monkey. This tree was very thick, and there were also holes on the trunk. It was covered with all kinds of vine branches, so it was easy to climb up. When they got to the location of the plane wreckage, Sumu looked at it with his clairvoyant eyes for a long time and found that there were no snakes, only some small rodents. When they saw Sumyu, they all ran away. A false alarm. Sumyu found a wooden stick and rummaged inside. Fortunately, he was wearing a gas mask. The floating dust was not ordinary. There was a corpse on the co-pilot, which had turned into bones. A branch penetrated his body. It seemed that when the plane crashed, he was stabbed to the core by the branch before he could parachute. Soon, Sumyu found a dilapidated book not far from the pilot. Notebook. That notebook is very old, but fortunately it was carefully wrapped in oil paper and cloth, and it is very well preserved. Did you find anything? At this moment, Fatty Wang's voice came from behind. Sumyu knew that they probably came up because he hadn't been down for too long. This should be the American soldier who asked for help. Unfortunately, something went wrong when he landed. It was obvious that he could not wait for rescue. Sumyu said, and handed a name tag in his hand to Fatty Wang. There was a person's name on it, and behind it was the badge of the unit he belonged to. Sumyu casually put the notebook into his bag. That's it? At this moment, there was another thumping sound coming from the whole tree. Fatty Wang became a little anxious, dropped the stick in his hand and walked out. What are you knocking? It's so noisy. Are you so unbearable to be lonely? Damn it, even if you become a ghost, you still can't make people feel peaceful. Not to mention, there is some truth in the ancient saying that ghosts are afraid of evil people. Fatty Wang exhaled fragrance for a while, and the sound stopped as expected. However, after it stopped, everyone felt that it was better to knock. The surrounding silence was a bit scary. As if a storm is coming. Come on, it's empty. At this moment, Fatty Wang's voice came from the head. He and Men Yuping were lying on a huge branch. There seemed to be a big hole there. Sumyu and Fatty Wang climbed up to take a look. This is a huge tree hole. The middle of the entire tree is actually hollow. Metal chains as thick as an adult man's arm are nailed around it. A coffin is tied under the chain. This scene is simply shocking. This mysterious tree, the giant tree, and this mysterious coffin are difficult to complete even in modern times. How much manpower and material resources were required to complete this thousands of years ago? What's even weirder is that they have already seen this tree just now, and this is why is a real tree hollow in the middle and it has not fallen down for thousands of years. Fatty Wang seems to be still alive. Come on, let's go down and have a look. Mina Yuping looked at Sumyu and asked. Okay, Sumyu goes ahead. With that said, Sumyu and Men Yuping asked the fat man to get the climbing rope from the bag. They both tied it up and climbed down along the iron chain. The closer they got to the dark coffin, the dangerous feeling in Sumyu's heart became more solemn. It was a dark coffin. Just when they entered the tree hole, the knocking sound sounded again. In the tree hole, the sound sounded different from what it sounded like outside. It sounded like the sound of blacksmithing. Could it be that this was actually an arsenal left over from World War II? When I thought about it, there was a group of World War II lunatics producing tools down here. Sumyu felt his scalp numb. Of course, it was all his imagination. In fact, the bottom of the coffin was dark, like a black hole staring at Sumyu and Mina Yuping. In the blink of an eye, the two of them followed the rust stains. The mottled bronze iron chain slid onto the dark coffin. The two of them examined it carefully. The entire coffin was smooth, without even a pattern. It was impossible to tell whose coffin it belonged to. Sumyu looked at it for a while. He used his own clairvoyance to look inside, and was shocked at this sight. Just now, he could only vaguely see a black shadow here through the big tree. When he entered, he looked again, inside the coffin. The thing was actually staring at the two of them with a pair of weird golden eyes. Sumyu suddenly felt a sense of danger in his heart, and he quickly pulled the bottle of stuffy oil and said, "Quickly, let's go, the things inside are still alive." As soon as Sumyu finished speaking, the coffin suddenly started shaking, and a chill ran down the backs of the two of them. No, that thing is coming out. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 249. No, that thing is coming out. Sumu shouted loudly, "Fat man, pull everyone up quickly." No, everyone is surrounded by the pheasant neck. At this moment, the voices of Fatty Wang and Shirley Yang were also heard from above. "Get in the hole, quickly," Peacock shouted loudly and slid down a bronze iron chain. The coffin underneath shook even more. Don't get off." Unfortunately, before Sumu could finish his words, he was pushed down by Fatty Wang, who was sliding down. Several people fell on the dark coffin. The huge coffin could not withstand this sudden blow. Like a wild horse, it slid down the trunk towards the core of the tree. Sumu was awakened by the heat. When he woke up, he found that he was on the edge of an oasis in the desert, and the dark coffin was missing. He wanted to ask the system, but he didn't know what the unreliable system was doing. There was no movement at all. At this moment, he heard gunshots not far away. Sumu saw a statue nearby and climbed up. He quickly looked around and realized that everyone else was also awake. At this moment, Mina Yuping and Fatty Wang were also standing on a roof not far away. Looking at Shirley Yang and the others, they also found their positions. Only then did Sumu realize that several foreign mercenaries were shooting at something underground. There were countless small sandbags on the ground that were constantly moving, circling around the building where everyone was, but none of them climbed up. At this moment, he saw a mercenary not far away who had no bullets and stabbed something underground with a knife. He picked up a huge snake head and soon a strange smell came out. The smell comes. Sumu still didn't understand at this time that there was something under the ground. Seeing that the snake's head was stabbed by the sunlight, he quickly shouted, "Bottle of boredom. The things under the ground are afraid of the sun and may be ghouls." Several more gunshots were heard from the side, and Sumu turning around, he saw a mercenary shooting at the sand dunes with a gun, but it was of no use. His speed could not keep up with the movement of the thing. Shirley Yang quickly stopped him. Shooting like this was a waste of bullets. The sun is dazzling above our heads. If everyone stays under the sun like this, they will probably be roasted to death. Although Sumu guessed that the things underneath were ghouls, Sumu had no way to deal with them. With the protection of the sand dunes, nothing could hit them. At this time, Mina Yuping shouted, "Hurry up and eat the talisman Sumu gave you." After saying that, he swallowed the yellow paper bag into his mouth. Others were hesitant as well, unable to understand why they were eating a piece of paper. Shirley Yang took out the talisman Sumu had given her as a spare and spoke loudly to them in English. Finally, everyone swallowed the yellow paper bag. Sumu swallowed the yellow paper bag, but still didn't understand the meaning of the stuffy oil bottle. This kind of yellow paper bag should be used to ward off evil spirits, but the things under the ground didn't look like ghosts. Just as Sumu was thinking, Mina Yuping jumped from the roof to the sand dune. Sumu was shocked and shouted, "Menjuping." The moving sandbags surrounding the roof felt Menjuping's arrival, and they all rushed towards Menjuping. Just when everyone thought that Mina Yuping was certain to die, a magical scene happened. When those sandbags came near Mina Yuping, they all suddenly disappeared. There was no movement at all around Men Yuping. Everyone was a little surprised. Mina Yuping looked at everyone and said, "Jump the hell down. Why are you all so afraid of death?" As he spoke, Fatty Wang also jumped to the ground. Like Mina Yuping, those people, all the small moving sandbags were gone. Sumu looked at the things under the sculpture, gritted his teeth, closed his eyes, and jumped down. When Sumu felt his feet on the ground, a few seconds later, Sumu opened his eyes. The huge triangular snake head did not appear around Sumu, and the entire area became very calm. One after another, the mercenaries all jumped down, and the people from before gathered together again. Only then did Sumu know that he was the last to wake up. After they came out, they floated on the small puddle on the oasis and happened to meet another team from Judkau. The mercenaries inside had met Sumu and the others before, and they were all acquaintances, so they were all willing to help. Before Shirley Yang and the others could reminisce about old times, something came out from under the sand, and they quickly pulled a few people down. Before Shirley Yang could figure out a way to save him, he woke up on his own. Everyone lamented that it was not easy to escape. Hubei asked with a smile. "Brother, what are you feeding everyone? Why is it so powerful? All the monsters underground are gone." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 250. Brother, what are you feeding everyone? Why is it so powerful? All the monsters underground are gone. Su Mu was also curious and looked at Mi Nayuping puzzledly. Mi Nayuping answered while packing his backpack, that bag has a layer of medicinal materials made of realgar. Those things under the ground may be a kind of snake. But staying underground all year round, always devouring dead bodies, is almost like a ghoul. When Mi Nayuping said this, Sumu understood. I'm afraid everyone is covered in the smell of realgar, which makes those things instinctively reluctant to get close. Although these things are similar to ghouls, they are still snakes after all. However, Sumu knew that there were some words that Mi Nayuping had not said. Those mercenaries just threw 21 grenades to blow up things that were probably not just snakes. The last scream was obviously without blowing up the thing to death. Sumu couldn't help but be shocked at how big that thing must be. Mi Nayuping finished packing his backpack and continued, "Okay, let's take advantage of that the effect hasn't dissipated yet. Everyone hurry through this place." Everyone nodded, resumed their defensive formation, and walked forward. Everyone continued to walk towards the destination. Fatty Wang looked at the debris and sighed, "Oh, it's such a shame that such a big city is gone like this." "Yes. You think, is this also caused by the wizard's curse?" "Impossible." Mi Nayuping replied firmly, "According to my understanding, the wizard's curse only targets those who betray them. The residents of the city are all his people. The wizard has no reason to deal with them. These people should not will be cursed. Could it be that the city is hostile to the wizard, so he cursed this city?" Sumu also began to think about it. The needle on Peacock's grandfather's head was inseparable from the curse. Cursing such a vicious thing, if carried out by a living person, will also have to pay a certain price. If it was really a wizard who did it, then the human sacrifices he took out would be enough for him to form an army. Mi Nayuping denied Sumu's view. The curse can also be called a kind of evil magic and cannot be simply released. While everyone was discussing, a foreigner suddenly shouted, "Oh my God!" Sumu had heard them say this several times. Sumu quickly looked back to see what the foreigner had discovered that surprised him. He held a gun in one hand and pointed to the right side of the group with the other. He had a big mouth and a look of disbelief on his face. Everyone saw it and ran over. Standing beside the foreigner, Sumu also saw something that surprised him, which was on the sand not far from everyone. Revealing two big stone hands, holding a metal box in the hand, which was shiny and not rusty at all. Seeing such a thing is really tempting, but with the previous experience, no one dares to go up taking a step forward. Fatty Wang looked at it and couldn't help but said his grandfather's, "This thing is so annoying, it looks like a valuable guy. However, it is too weird for such a thing to suddenly appear in front of everyone." Men Yuping put down the telescope in his hand, and everyone was waiting for his order. He thought about it carefully, and took out a piece of fresh pork with scarlet blood stains on it. Min Yuping pressed it hard and took out the piece of pork. A piece of pork was thrown over. In everyone's sight, The pork rolled a few times on the ground and stopped under the big hand. Everyone held their breath for fear that something would come out again. After a while, that place there was still no movement at all, so Min Yuping said, "Everyone, let's go and take a look." The mercenaries were very happy when they heard that Men Yuping wanted to see the box. They even forgot about the danger just now. Because according to international regulations, if there is any treasure in the box, it belongs to everyone. They came closer. After taking a look, he realized that the box was originally a black iron box. Such a big box, Sumu could probably hold a squatting adult. When Sumu took a closer look, he saw that there were some words engraved on it that were similar to those on the previous pillars. The text was exactly the same, and Sumu read it word by word: "Treasure chest in the underworld." These 4 words are easy to understand. The box in front of me is actually related to the underworld. Fatty Wang took a look and said, "Oh, why is it such an evil thing again? Brother, I don't think you should open it yet." Min Yuping also agreed with Fatty Wang's statement. "We don't know what it is at all. If there is something evil, everyone would be uncomfortable." Sumu thought about it for a while and finally decided to open it. However, he wanted to open the box alone and asked everyone to stay 5 meters away from him. Everyone walked behind him. Sumu circled around the black iron box and put a spell around it. And then shouted, "The gods from all directions show their power, disperse." Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 251. The gods from all directions show their power and disperse. I don't know if it was Min Yuping's illusion. After Sumu said the last word, Min Yuping saw a cloud of black air floating into the air. After Sumu finished reciting the spell, he immediately pressed a protruding point on the box. Just as a bang was heard, the lid of the box suddenly bounced into the air and fell to the ground. Before everyone could be happy, there was another rumbling sound from Sumu, and Min Yuping didn't know what had happened. What happened? He rushed over to support Sumu. Only when Menju bottle was halfway away, the big hand holding the box in front of him turned into powder, and the black iron box fell to the ground. At this time, everyone they gathered around to see what was inside the box. Min Yuping looked inside and saw a yellow scroll, now rolled into a tube shape. Sumu took out the tweezers from the bag and brought the rubber. After putting on his gloves, he carefully took out the scroll. Seeing Sumu's technique, Fatty Wang smiled and said, "Brother Su, you are really good at it. You can do the skill of picking up objects by touching the gold and turning it upside down." Su Mu replied angrily, "This is the method used when taking cultural relics to prevent the sweat on the hands from destroying these antiquities." While speaking, Sumu had already taken out the scroll, and there was a silk thread on it to tie it. Sumu took a deep breath and opened the scroll. At this moment, Min Yuping's ear suddenly there was a very piercing scream, like tinnitus. The pain was so bad that Min Yuping quickly covered his ears with his hands, but it had no effect. The sound still kept ringing in Min Yuping's ears. Finally, Min Yuping couldn't bear the sound and passed out. When Min Yuping woke up, Min Yuping came to the dark tunnel again, and there was a voice calling from the depths of the darkness. Mentioning Min Yuping's name, Men Yuping slowly got up. After rubbing his head, he found that he seemed not to remember how he got to this place. No longer thinking about it, Men Yuping slowly walked along the tunnel towards the inside. Walking, this time, Min Yuping touched the wall with his hands. There were bumps and bumps on it, but there seemed to be some pattern. Min Yuping closed his eyes and felt it. Finally, Min Yuping discovered that the unevenness on the wall turned out to be a kind of writing, and Men Yuping actually knew the meaning of this strange writing, which was the word underworld. Men Yuping read these 2 words in a weird syllable, and as soon as he read it at the end, a burst of dazzling white light suddenly came from the dark tunnel ahead. Mi Na Yuping quickly covered his eyes with both hands. Through the gap between his hands, Mi Na Yuping saw a golden figure. Yuping closed his eyes tightly and heard a familiar voice calling Men Yuping's name. In a daze, Men Yuping opened his eyes again. Sumu and Fatty Wang were looking at Men Yuping's face and kept shouting Mi Na Yuping's name was mentioned. Sumu suddenly gave Mi Na Yuping a slap. Mi Na Yuping immediately woke up and quickly stood up. Looking around, he saw that it was still a desolate and abandoned city. In front of his eyes, the box was still on the ground. Sumu walked up to Mi Na Yuping and asked, "Brother, what's wrong with you? Why did he suddenly cover his ears and fall to the ground?" Mi Na Yuping was stunned and asked me, "How long have I been unconscious?" Coma? Sumu looked at his watch and said, "It only takes 1 minute from when you fall down to when you wake up. Are you suffering from heat stroke? I still have medicine here." Men Yuping took the medicine given by Sumu and swallowed it in one gulp. Mi Na Yuping thought, maybe Mi Na Yuping really had heat stroke. Then, Mi Na Yuping remembered the scroll in Sumu's hand before and asked quickly, said Sumu, "Where is the scroll in the box?" "Real."